So first off, welcome again. If you're looking for matchmaking, how to choose the right remote research methodology hosted by Designing Women and SDXD featuring Monica Z, then you are in the right place. First of all, I'd like to extend a welcome, whether you're a returning member or a new member. You know, at SDXD, it's our mission to create an environment that connects, that educates, and that inspires. I'd also like to recognize and thank Designing Women, Julie Morgan and Tina Singh, for being such wonderful co-organizers, and I'd like to hand it off to Julie.
Thanks, James, and thanks everyone for inviting us to partner with SDXD today. We're especially excited about learning from Monica again. I first met Monica in May 2016 for our Designing Women panel on UX research at GoPro. Monica has a wealth of expertise in user research, and I am very much looking forward to the presentation. So I am Julie, founder and board member of Designing Women. Tina Singh works with me as a board member. She's a UX strategist at ServiceNow. She and I head up quarterly events in San Diego and remotely now. Founded in 2014, Designing Women's mission is to champion and amplify female identifying UX professionals. Our greater vision is to infuse equity into innovation, both within the tech industry and beyond. Our next event will feature our first male speaker at Designing Women, Jonathan Coleman. He's a senior design manager at Intercom and an equity advocate. He will be asking, what do we owe to each other? The event will take place on July 9th at 12 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. You can view more details through our link at designingwomensd.com. And while you're there, feel free to sign up for our quarterly newsletter. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Julie, Tina, and the entire Designing Women community. Let's give them that virtual round of applause. And I'd be remiss if I did not thank all of my co-organizers. I'm James, the president of XD, by the way. And for those of you who have been to previous events, you might notice that there's a new face on this slide. And that's because I'd like to welcome Kennedy D'Souza to the SDXD board as our head of social media. He's a really awesome guy. And Kennedy, I'd like to give you the stage to say some words.
All right, thank you so much. I'm happy to be part of SDXD, working with wonderful people and creative minds, and I look forward to working with all of you and also getting to know all of the new faces in this room. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thanks, Kennedy. Congratulations and welcome to the team.
Thank you.
Next up is our fabulous advisory board. We lean on their wisdom to organize these events, so thank you so much. Brent is in the house, Eric's in the house, so appreciate the support. And of course, Adobe XD, our sponsors who are providing this Zoom and helping to keep the lights on here. Go to letsxd.com for more information. So a little overview for today. Monica will be presenting for about 30 to 40 minutes. There will be a general Q&A and closing remarks. And then there's a totally optional networking portion where we'll break into different breakout rooms in order to connect with each other. As an overview of her presentations, she'll go over the benefits, considerations for 3 different methods, and then we'll pause to do a Q&A for some of our top questions. So please ask questions in the chat and they will be answered at specified pause points in the presentation. Before I hand over the spotlight to Monica, just wanted to tell you a little bit about who will be speaking today. She's got over 2 decades of qualitative research experience, and she's been an early adopter of online research. She's worked with Fortune 500 companies, top research firms, and startups in the healthcare, finance, and consumer goods sectors. And she was previously president of QRCA, the Qualitative Research Consultants Association. So let's give a warm SDXD Designing Women welcome to Monica, and I will hand it off to her.
Okay, let me share my screen. Here we go. All right, thanks James, Julie, Tina, everybody involved at SDXD and Designing Women. I appreciate the invitation to present to you guys today. Just a little bit more about me. I do have 2 decades of experience, which sounds like so much. Makes me sound like an old timer. I do primarily customer experience work, done thousands of projects online, thousands of interviews, got my start in about probably about 99, 2000, my first groups. I was talking to consumers in AOL chat rooms way back then. And I fell in love with it. A professor at Cal State Fullerton introduced me to the methodology. I helped her with some research and I was hooked. So online qual goes by a lot of different names: remote, digital qual. Here are some of the methods that you might recognize. This is a pretty comprehensive list. I think everything can kind of sit in one of these buckets. And I'm not going to touch base on all of them. And quite frankly, I don't do social media listening, and I don't do a lot of usability testing. I work in a different kind of aspect of customer experience, mostly product design work and that kind of stuff. But I just want off the bat, now that you've had a chance to look at some of these methods, just how many qualitative research studies do you think you've conducted online ever? I give you a moment to fill out our short survey. And if you haven't chosen a selection, now do it. And I'm going to close this out here in about 3 seconds. All righty. So excellent. Okay, so it looks like some of you have dabbled in this, and I don't know if this has been real recent. You've been dabbling in it, 1 to 5 interviews or groups. Few of you have done more than that, and that's excellent. I hope you get something out of this too. It's going to be a mix of sort of basics and maybe some medium level content. So let me close this out. So what I'm going to do in the time we have together, if my screen will change, is I'm going to go through the benefits for remote qual, online qual. I use those terms interchangeably. I'm really going to emphasize a lot on what to consider when you're selecting a method. It's not one size fits all. And it often doesn't play if you're going to do a face-to-face interview, let's do a webcam interview instead. It can play in a lot of different places. I'm going to give you some best practices for designs and a cursory look into the analysis. But as I go through this, I have real text-heavy slides. I wanted you to know that. That was on purpose because I didn't want to create 2 decks. I want you to have a good takeaway item from this. So I'm not going to talk about everything that's on the slide, but it's there for you to review. And if you have any questions, put them in the chat box. I am going to take some breaks after each method, and James is going to feed me some questions out of the chat room. And so that's the place to put your questions. But I'm going to try to give you 3 case studies along with all that information in 30 minutes. So I'm going to move fast. I'm going to talk fast. I'm hoping that you recognize something in your own work for this, and let's just get started. The first thing I'm going to do is just share some common concerns or do some myth busting. I hear a lot when I present this idea to maybe a new client or a set of stakeholders, and not everybody can kind of get on board with this idea. And one myth that you're probably going to hear from anybody that you might talk to about this is they can't imagine this being, you know, personal or intimate or making a connection with a respondent online. And I just haven't found that to be the case for me. I think that the anonymity factor online gives people permission to be themselves. I mean, we see that play out in media and social media posts where people aren't kind. But when you're talking about a product or service, especially something that they're in love with or they're passionate about, you know, when you have a fan, a user fan, that you can really get a lot of great feedback from them. And then the other thing I want to put out there is something that is true is that it's not a secure environment. And if you have materials or wireframes, or you have concepts, you have something like that, it's not entirely secure. There's no way that somebody cannot snap a screenshot and have your content. So that is something I hear a lot about. Some of the platforms are better with signing off on privacy contracts or NDAs and stuff online, but really it's not the most secure environment. And I just want to be candid about that. Okay, so there's two main types of remote qualitative research. There's what we call synchronous, which is a real-time moderated kind of chat, or moderated environment, kind of like this is real time, something is happening in real time, and asynchronous, something that is unmoderated, doesn't mean that it's any less difficult or any less time consuming or laborious or exhausting. It just means that you aren't sitting with the respondents while they're answering your questions or executing your task. Another way we can think about this is when we talk about synchronous studies, we talk about it in length of days or maybe hours or even, you know, minutes. You could do something real quick online for 15 minutes. And then asynchronous studies generally are longitudinal. They could run 2 days, they can run 4 days, they can run 4 months, they can run, you know, for years sometimes. If you think of a big panel or a community, that can go on for a while. So that's another way to think of them. Another major difference is a synchronous study, you're really generally talking to a handful of people, 6, 8, 10, maybe 12 people, but that's kind of hard to manage if you're doing it all at once. If you're doing individual interviews, that's easier. Asynchronous studies, you can have hundreds of people in a community and they're all executing the task for you. Now, I'll talk more about, that's going to be one of our 3 methods we're going to talk about. But each has a different skill set. Each has their own benefits, and we'll talk about something on both sides of this. Okay. So generally speaking, we got some online benefits that I think are the best. These are not the only benefits, but they're the ones, the 3 I want to talk to you about that I think will be most helpful for you to understand is that there's a lot of ways to, I'm going to drop down on my list, to tag and code the information inside if you're using a paid platform. This is a huge time saver. Some of them have machine learning, so they will try to create a code book for you. I don't have a preference for that. Platforms doing this for me. They never seem to be right. You know, just, I don't know what the statistics are, but machine learning just isn't there with sentiment analysis yet. However, if you're working in the same space all the time, you probably have an established code book that you can upload to the platform, and this will code your transcripts for you. Still have to go through them, but this is a wonderful benefit. The other thing that I really like, there's no fussing with recording equipment. Recordings are immediate when they're done online. And I don't know about you, but if I'm always paranoid that a camera's not running when I'm in somebody's home, or I don't have, you know, backup batteries, that kind of thing. So I find this takes a lot of stress off of me. And then the third thing is we can create organic, you don't create an organic conversation your customers would do that for you, or your panelists or your respondents would do that for you, or these can live as very structured, organized content that you are just driving them through. In fact, some of the platforms that I use will force responses before they're allowed to be aided with the next question. So those are some of the benefits. So my first methodology I want to talk about is micro communities, or what they call bulletin board communities or focus groups. This is an asynchronous method. It's basically a threaded discussion, and it's something like Reddit, but not. It's something like Slack, but not. I work in a closed environment, which is one of these platforms meant for research purposes. And these platforms grew out of user forums and message boards. A lot of technology companies were doing that, so this is very familiar to some of you that work in the tech space. They can look like, I don't know if you guys can see my cursor, but they can look very flat like this, or there's some platforms that look very social media-like, where my questions on this one run down the margin. Here there are tiles for you to click and go through. Generally speaking, these run from anywhere from 2 days to 2 weeks. It's a micro community. It's a small, it's meant to be finite. You have a study goal and you're working towards that. But this is really great. Like, say you're going to run something for 5 days. It's great for an iterative type of study, design work, concept exploration, identifying service gaps. You could have somebody use your product for 3 days and tell you where the flaws are. I use this method a lot for customer journey work. We usually run for 3 to 5 days on a project like that. Let's see. I don't think I talked about the idea of a closed platform adequately, but when you're on a research platform like this, the idea that the conversation stays tightly within this community, and like I mentioned, people's profiles are there, your data's all in one place. A lot of times there's video content here. It's a little bit safer than it is if you were to use some of the free community platforms that are out there, and you certainly wouldn't go out to Reddit to do research, I don't think. But you could go to Facebook, because Facebook has private community. I mean, you have a private Facebook group. You could do something like on Facebook. That would be one DIY solution for this. I have another, I got a couple of things recently, free platforms. I'll tell you about the other one. The name I think is called Focus Group It. And they're a free platform. They don't have all the bells and whistles that a lot of platforms do, but it is a free option for you if you didn't want to do something in, say, Facebook, private Facebook group. Okay, so when are you going to use this stuff? This is the kind of method, because it's running over a longer period, where you might ask for consumer reflection, storytelling. It's a great place for attitudinal data collection. It's a great place if you want to track behavior over time. I already mentioned, if you want to iterate materials, you can do something on a Tuesday, have your team revise it on Wednesday, and then Wednesday night have everybody come back and take a look at the revised documents or the revised designs, and give you some more feedback, or Thursday morning, you know, take a break in between. And it's also a great place if you are in one of those companies where they know you're doing user research. So this department wants something from you, and this department wants to add a question. Oh, and the sales department has a question about this, that, or the other thing. So this is a great place to do that kind of work. Again, deep dive, reflection, storytelling, attitudinal data. That's what I use this methodology for. Depth and abundance of data collected. Here I'm going to tell you, one group of, let's say, 10 users, because I like that number 10 and 12 is what I usually do a group with, will create something like 2.5 times the data than if you were to do 10 or 12 interviews. There is just more room and more space because this is flexible. Being asynchronous, people come in and out of it at their own pace when they have time. They generally spend lots of time with you. And, you know, depending on how you put together the discussion or the activities, you could run this as a group, open it up, and everybody talk about, you know, what they like about a product, and then close it up and talk about, you know, what the competitors are doing or something like that. There's a lot of tools, engagement tools on this platform that keep people interested. It is sometimes, I show you how flat it is. It's sometimes difficult to read everybody's comments and everything, but if you have things like collaging tools and markup tools and card sorting tools within this platform, something that where they're working interactively with it rather than just typing tests, can be very, very helpful to keep respondents engaged, and it pumps up the amount of data you get. Okay, some considerations, though, I do want to point out is a very high commitment level from the researcher. Just because this isn't a real-time method doesn't mean you're off the hook for moderating this board, following up with respondents that don't show up, probing when somebody's not clear, which can be a big drawback if your questions aren't formulated correctly. So test all your questions out. And at the back end, it takes longer to analyze just because you have some more than enough data. And engagement can really depend on the number of participants and their passion for the topic. I did some political stuff last night about a initiative here in San Diego. Not a real sexy topic, really hard to keep people engaged in this. So what we did is we did a lot of displaying of the referendums and the modifications to language. It was all about the language that was used to write up the argument in favor and the argument in opposition of this item. And we use markup tools so they could use a red marker for things that they didn't like, use a green marker for things that stood out in a good way for them. And it was a great interactive tool. And then just the last thing I mentioned earlier is just having enough time for analysis. All right, so let me give you an example. Let me get a little drink. Okay. So here I wanted to learn about the online application experience from a regional credit union. Turned out that they had something like I think it was 40 or 46% of first-time credit union members starting their application online, but then walking into a branch to finish up that application. And the client just didn't know what was going on. So I looked at who we were talking to decide whether I needed to sit down with these people, whether I needed to bring them into a lab. Maybe there was something actually in the application part of the website that wasn't working for them. So I thought about who we're talking to. So digital natives, this was their preferred method. We went in with the assumption this was their preferred method of filling out the credit union application, but that they weren't finishing it there. So doing an online study just seemed to make sense. And I needed a lot of time for reflection. I needed them to go back to those application pages and review them for me and tell me what worked for them and what didn't work for them. very small sample size. Credit unions don't have a whole lot of money to spend on their consumer research, to be quite frank with you. So it was just a little bit less expensive for them to do it this way. And there were 3 different personas that they had under the category of millennials that they wanted to explore with. So if I wanted to do 6 or 8 interviews with each of those, this would have just been a drawn out study. To do it online just went much quicker. And so what we did is a 3-day online community designed around a preconceived idea of what the journey stages were. We did a stakeholder workshop in advance. And each of the exercises we did were designed to aid recall so they could give us some feedback. The outcome of this study, just real quick, it was real surprising to the client. It turns out that the terms that a credit union uses and a banking app like, say, Capital One or Robinhood were completely different. So they didn't understand what the application was asking them to provide, which it seems very simple and basic for many people, but this is what the problem was. So it was very good learning for them. So here are my pro tips for this method. Just set clear expectations at the onset of the project. It's going to take them some time, especially if you're asking for a 3-day commitment or a 5-day commitment, and be very clear with what you expect for them. There's nothing worse than recruiting 10 participants and having 3 show up for the research because they didn't realize there was a lot to do. And you know, in that vein, incentivize or reward people for the time that they spend. You can't ask somebody to spend 3 days with you going through all this and give them a $10 Amazon gift card. It just hasn't worked in my experience. And that relates to the attrition rates that I have written there. So that was a lot in this first one. This is my favorite method, by the way. So that's why I spent so much time on it. I think it has so many applications. It's just a really great method. But I'm going to pause here and ask for questions from James. What do you got for me?
Yeah, we've got some great questions from chat, so appreciate that.
Okay.
The first 2 are kind of related. They're from Brent and Mariani. And it's a little bit more detail about the tools themselves. So what are some good tools for running a micro community? And then in regards to setup, are these off the shelf type things, or do you have to custom build them? And then do they come with participants, or do you have to recruit them yourself?
Okay. So a study is sort of, well, it's not sort of, it's designed this way. You can give them, if you're using a service, right? You're not going to DIY this or, you know, do it all yourself. You can hand them your customer list and they will reach out to them. Now, depending on how you ask for them to contact your participants, you could ask them to call them on the phone. You could have them go through a screening survey online and then have them call them. You could have people intercepted at a certain store, the Gap, Apple Store, something like that. There's lots of different ways on this, but generally speaking, they often work with panel providers. So Research Now is a pretty popular panel provider, and the platforms I work with most often work with them. So they have a panel to go to. So they can do a query and they can tell you if they have people who use a particular piece of software or people whose job is C-level. This is great for a B2B study, by the way. I use this quite often for B2B studies where I frame it up this way. This is an expert panel. This is you learning from your peers. We're looking for think tank participants, and you can keep them for 3 days. Did that answer the question, you think?
Yeah, there was a little bit of a related question from Claudia, and she asked, when do you stay away from free tools?
When do you stay away from free tools? That's a great question. I think that, okay, so I mentioned, I wrote it down here on my piece of paper here. Focus Group It gave me a demo recently, and they have sort of the bare bones of a platform. They don't have some of the fun bells and whistles. I don't remember that you could brand. Many of these you can brand with your company's, you know, colors and logo. It'll look seamless for your panel members maybe. I wouldn't use them if I needed to run something maybe for a longer period of time. So something more than 3 to 5 days, I probably wouldn't use a free tool. I probably wouldn't try to DIY it in a Google group or something like that. I need those, I need it to feel special. I need it to feel true and credible. Does that make sense?
Great. And we'll do one more question from DY. He says, you mentioned getting that right incentive price point for this type of research is challenging. So have you found a sweet spot between balancing your budget and providing meaningful compensation for the participants?
Yeah. So this one, okay, I'm gonna answer this question with a real life example. This week this happened to me. I am looking to do a project with AI infrastructure architects. So super brainiacs, right? And I want them to spend 3 days with me talking about my clients' digital support tools. And they want to give them $150 for 3 days worth of work. And I'm asking for at least 30 minutes a day from these individuals. So I don't have these people, and my clients list isn't really producing the results we'd like. So I went out to a panel provider and said, hey, could you find me these people? And they think a proper incentive for these type of people, participants, should be somewhere between $400 and $600 for 3 days. And I like, what? Wow, I had no idea. But here's the rub, is if you don't pay them what their time is worth, they aren't going to show up. Now, regular consumers, you know, it's about 20 bucks a day, 25 bucks a day for 20 to 30 minutes worth of work. So I use Amazon gift cards. I fulfill, they spend 3 days with me. I send them a $75 Amazon gift card. Let's move on and do the next one, okay now?
Sounds good.
Okay, so this next one, I would love to know in the chat stream, have you guys done any digital ethnography? Just type in yes into the chat stream if you have. This is sometimes called self-reported ethnography or auto-ethnography. D-Scout is one of the big players out there. Have you guys done a D-Scout city? Okay, so quite a few of you. I can see the chat stream moving. Okay, so this can be a synchronous or an asynchronous method. It's almost exclusively used for individual interviews. Okay, so the idea here is you set forth a task for them and you ask them to upload the video in the moment experience kind of thing. And that could be like, show me your garage shelving system. Show me what's inside your refrigerator. Take me on a trip with you shopping for lip balm. Or show me what it's like in the mornings to make breakfast for your kids on a school day. This kind of in the moment research is what we call digital ethnography. And I borrowed the image on the left from D-Scout. This is probably the most popular platform out there right now. It's fantastic. The example I'm going to show you is fantastic. It makes it really easy for you, the researcher, because it collects everything and keeps everything in that closed space or that closed environment I was talking about. But that's not the only way to do it, right? So you can ask that question, show me what's inside your refrigerator, and have them just take a video with their cell phone and upload it to Dropbox. That's one way of doing it. But again, I'm sort of a platform proponent because I like everything kept together nice and tight and neat. And I don't have to worry. There's no technical, if there's any technical issues, the platform provider has to deal with my respondents, not me, because it would be awful to get 20 phone calls on a Saturday morning because they couldn't upload something for me Friday night, right? So that's another reason I like them. Let me see, whatever. Let's see. Yeah, so let's just go on here. Great for home usage studies. I think I mentioned that. Unboxing videos. You have a product, you want to send them, have them unbox it and use it right there for you. Can't get a cleaner read than that. Home tours, shop-alongs, even rescreening participants. You know, I did mention this could be a synchronous or an asynchronous method. For the real-time method, they would just take you shopping on their phone with them. And that is one thing that I've done in Target stores, you know, just kind of take your phone with you and I'll be there, and show me what you're seeing and talk to me about it. And then I can probe right then and there. It's a little bit more scheduling and stuff, but it's entirely doable. Okay, biggest benefit right here, unparalleled access to consumers right in the moment for whatever they're doing. And this is, I mean, I just think it's phenomenal that I would have insight into people's lives and not have them edit or filter themselves. And what I mean by that, like if you were to go to somebody's home to do an interview, you know, they put on their nice clothes, they usher their kids out of the house, they clean their house, all those kinds of things that they'll do before you get there, which is not a true or authentic experience. I think if you ask them to do this for you, there is less of that going on. The other aspect of this I want to talk about is efficiency in collecting the data. This is especially good for your timeline. You can talk to a lot of people all at once, right? You send them out to do this task, or you send them out to do this mission, and you could send 50 people out all at once and collect, you know, 50 activities all at once. You couldn't do that in real life, right? You couldn't go and do 50 interviews, shop-alongs overnight, right? You couldn't visit 50 people's homes overnight, but this way you could. And you often do want to do that, and it happens real quick, and the data's all there for you. Let's talk about some of the things you should consider when choosing this method. When you must see the consumer when they have to perform something for you, or the action is behavioral, this is when you want to use this. You can send them, like I mentioned, you can send them out to do this activity, or you can go along with them. Sorry if that popped up on your screen. I have a Norton update that just won't leave me alone. Okay, and I think the other thing I wanted to mention here is this is more applicable, or let me say, this runs a lot smoother with a mobile app. Like I said, you can DIY it and have them take video on their phone, or take their tablet, or, you know, pick up their laptop and do something. But these mobile apps are real efficient. They're better at picking up on somebody's So what I do is I ask them to produce maybe a 30-second video for a question. Well, it has a counter clock, and we know if they're not going to fulfill that 30-second video or 3-minute video. And everything seems to work right with uploads and everything. You can give somebody instructions on how to use Dropbox and upload their videos there, but some consumers just can't handle that. One downside to this is if you do not moderate these live, which is my preferred method anyway, you don't have that second chance at probing what they're doing. You have to go back and do the rewind with them, I call it. So you go back and you might have to interview some people on the phone or show them the video and ask them what they were doing right then and there. To get a clean read on the data. All right, so brief case study. Okay, so I did this study for a branding agency. There was no way that I could have done this study any other way. Here's what they asked of me. They said, we need to know what people think of public restrooms in order to create a new products and new campaign around this public restroom experience. Well, this is an intensely private moment. I didn't ask them to film themselves using the restroom, but you know, I wanted to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. So if in the course of these next 10 days, you happen to be out and have to stop at a public restroom, please take this time and show me the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I had to recruit a lot of people for this to get enough data to take a look at it. And then we did some questions. We followed up with some email questions. There was no way I could have done this any other way. There's no way to plan to go to a public restroom with somebody. Anyway, this was my first D-Scout project, and it worked flawlessly. It was great. All righty, so just a couple things to point out here. I want you to pilot and pre-test all your missions or all your questions because, like I mentioned earlier, there's no room for misunderstanding. And I also want you to keep in mind that less is more. So if you need to learn, let me put it this way, if your objectives include multiple needs, then take the time to break apart those questions and recruit people for smaller journeys or smaller tasks or smaller missions, because less is more. This can be draining or taxing on a customer that you're asking to do this. All right, that was the quick one on that one. James, let's break here for some questions.
You know what, Monica, you did such a clear job.
Nobody has any questions.
Digital ethnography. There are no current questions, so I vote that we continue. And if anyone thinks of something between now and the end of the presentation, we can hit it up.
Okay, the last part will go quicker because I think everybody's done this given the certain situations. Okay, so I wanted to make sure I told you the two platforms. Okay, so or the one here, back up. I got an invitation to try a platform for free. My understanding is that it's free for everyone till the end of June. And I know today is the 26th. Sorry, I looked at my calendar. I know today is the 26th. I'm sorry this didn't happen earlier. But the name of the platform was Watch Me Think. And I wanted to make sure that you guys knew about it because you might be able to do a test drive or just some sort of kind of practice run for fun, and it wouldn't cost you anything. So I want to make sure to share that with you. Okay, so the last one is webcam interviews or group interviews. It's harder than you think. I will just let you know that. Just basically for any of you that haven't done a Zoom meeting in the last 12 weeks, this is not as easy as it looks. That's all I got to say. Okay, it may be easy for you, but this is a great way to collect data from users. And most of the research skills you have will work online, but there are some things that are different. I love this for groups that I use these for social topics because I want the crosstalk, right? Or category exploration. So people who buy athletic shoes in a road runner or some high-end running store, you know, so I want to talk to those kind of people. Persona development is a great place. I do individual interviews using Zoom for sensitive topics, concept refinement, usability, package design, unboxing. So that's the application, and it doesn't have to be individual interviews or group interviews. It could be moms with their kids, so, or their kid, a dyad. They could be triads. It could be buddy interviews where you have two friends come together and you interview them together. So it's not just one or the other. Something I should have done on the last slides, but I'll definitely do it on this one. So these are, one of these pictures I borrowed, this one right here from this platform. They have a mobile and a, like a PC version, or, you know, a tablet version and stuff like that. But here's kind of some of those tools I was mentioning earlier. If you can see my cursor. So this is an Adobe platform, so where you can see your respondents, and I can't remember exactly what we did here, but I think we showed them something online and then I asked them a quick polling question and then we talked about the polling results. So those are the kinds of tools. You can do that in the community, the micro community platform too. But so this is what it looks like. And let's see. Okay, some of the benefits, I think everybody's comfortable with this kind of communication right now. Not long ago, that wasn't the case, but for right now, it's pretty easy to get people to do this. I mean, people are just dying to talk to anybody. Zoom meetings are probably there's something they're doing at work, or they're doing with their friends, or doing it with their grandchildren. So this is not a hard one to find people to do anymore. What I really like about this is it so well mimics what we already do in our regular work, with some differences. Let me tell you about those differences. Again, when you would have done face-to-face work anyway, but in this environment, you got to be a little theatrical. Okay, and you have to know that you're a little theatrical too, and you got to talk a little bit more with your hands, and you have to get your timing right, and you have to have a certain cadence, and you got to keep the level of energy up, especially when you're doing, you know, 2 or more people in an interview, because as comfortable as everybody is, this is a really hard way to keep people engaged. And I just, over these last few weeks, think it's more about the energy level that is lacking. Like when you're in a room or a lab with somebody, you can pick up on physical cues. You don't get to make eye contact with this method. However, but I think it's something beyond this. I really think it's an energy thing, but it's entirely doable. And I think you keep that a little bit, you can foster that a little bit better if you can be a little, you can exaggerate. Like, see, I'm exaggerating my movements. You keep them better engaged, or they want to connect with you, or it helps keep their energy level up. The other thing I think I'd like to say about using webcams is, I don't know if you guys are viewing this on your tablet or your mobile device, but if you're showing any kind of materials to the participants, really the way to go is PC or laptop. I mean, a PC/laptop. Because you can't see things on this little tiny screen and have them zoom up. And if you're going to have them work with them, or you're going to ask them questions, you're going to keep it on the screen for any length of time. So I really like to screen for or request that people be on a larger screen for this kind of work. Okay, let's just go through. My last case study is I did some work for social change website. They had a lot of content. The platform is designed for people to not only donate money, but also to share these like feel good, some good news kind of stories, even though this was long before that YouTube channel. They were interested in talking to millennials. So of course I always think of online, almost always first. I feel like they're exceptionally comfortable with webcam interviews. We've all been Skyping and FaceTiming and now Zooming for years. Because this was a .org, small organization, they had a super small budget, so I could DIY this with, you know, the Zoom platform, and not have it cost them anything for platform or materials. And I needed to screen share on this one. I needed to show them different widgets and buttons and motivational tools on the website, and gain some feedback. And since this was about sharing, I did it in a group setting. We did a series of 60-minute webcam focus groups to find out, you know, like what would they share with the friends, what was appealing, which one of these buttons looks better, which one of them, you know, which message will mean the most to your friends because it auto-generated messages. In case you're wondering what the picture on the left is, this is called an iron fish, and I don't know if you guys know too much about the story behind this very small change to adding iron to the diet of underdeveloped countries with children who suffer from malnutrition. This firm, for lack of a better word, gave them this magic fish, and if you put it in your pot with your soup or your rice or whatever, it would heal your children, make your children better. I just thought that was just such a fascinating, simple thing. And those are the kind of stories that they had on their site. Let me just check my notes here. I think that's about it on this one. So some pro tips. In case you guys haven't figured this out yet, engagement has to happen early, and it has to happen with everyone. So if you are going to do a group, let's say, you want to engage the whole group of customers right off the bat, but you also want to remember your stakeholders in the back. You need to engage them too. Otherwise, there's too many distractions in their office or in their lives to really pay attention to the research. I don't know how many people have clients in the back room or their boss in the back room who's not really paying attention to the research and expects you to wrap it all up in a bow for them the very next day. The other thing was, let's see, what else did I want to point out? Oh, yeah. So limit the So limit the use of the speaker view when you're doing groups. So here you probably got me in speaker view, but when you're conducting a group interview, not so much with an individual interview, but when you're doing a group interview, the respondents can't see each other. They can't engage as well with each other, or they also don't see the physical cues of it's time to speak up now, or you're doing like a quick activity where which of these two concepts do you like the best, one or two, and they can't see what everybody else is doing, if they have it in speaker view. So you can lock the screen to show just 6. 6 is kind of like what I like to do. 4 to 6 is a sweet spot on this one. Yeah, that's what I'd say. Just, you know, be a little bit theatrical, keep the group size intimate, try not to use the platform outside, try not to limit the speaker view, some other things. You know, if you have any questions about anything that's written on any of these slides that I didn't address or we don't get in the Q&A, I have my contact information at the end. I can certainly answer the questions. But yeah, so let's pause here real quick for questions, and then I have just a couple more slides and we'll be all done.
Sounds good. We've got a question from Casey Drummond, and he's asking, for these webcam interviews and groups, how many observers and how many facilitators do you recommend from the research team?
Okay, yeah, that's a really good question. And it makes me remember something else I should tell you guys. Okay, unlimited number of observers. Okay, I talked about group size, keeping it manageable, 4 to 6 people. That gives everybody a chance to participate, you know, and everybody a chance to speak. But, oh my gosh, I forgot the other thing I was going to tell you that I forgot. Repeat the question one more time, because maybe it'll spark it in my mind.
Yeah, it's about how many observers and how many facilitators do you recommend for these?
That was the second part. Right. Okay. So generally 1 person speaking and moderating, though I have seen it done really effective with 2 people, where the 2 are kind of playing like DJ status, you know, 1 person's here or 1 person's the comedian and the other person's the straight guy. I have seen moderators do that online. A couple of gals I know, they do a great job with it. But what I'm going to tell you is have somebody else as a if you're the orchestra conductor of the group, you know, you're talking to everybody, you're making sure everybody participates, everybody answers the question, have a helper take care of the backroom kind of stuff, monitoring the questions, being my stage manager, just like James is right now. That's a must-have. It's really hard to do these on your own. If you have clients or stakeholders, you know, you have them in a private observation room where they're chatting and typing and wanting to send you messages and stuff, just having somebody send in between you and them is a good idea. Okay, next question.
Yeah, we've got another great question from Donna, and she asks, do you run into problems with webcam group participants influencing each other, and how do you deal with that? Same way you do face-to-face. Really, I mean, setting up your ground rules at the beginning of the group, everybody participates, nobody dominates. I want to hear from everybody. The only bad response is the response that you don't verbalize. You know, those kinds of things. And then you just have to remind them in the group, hey, listen, James, at the onset, I told you I wanted to hear from everybody. Hey, let's have Becky go first this time, you know? Or maybe if you're, this is actually the words that I use. I say, hey, if you know you're the kind of person that likes to talk a lot, then maybe let somebody else go first every once in a while. And you will see on the faces the people that go like this, right? They know who they are. They know they like to talk a lot. They have strong opinions. All right, and we've got one more from Lydia, and she asks, how do you feel about the chat feature during these sessions? Do you discourage it, or is it another source of information?
It can be used very effectively as another source of information. Here's how I use the chat. I don't like to use that. I mean, this is a conversation, right? It's not a chat. But chat groups are a totally different method. But what I do is I do this kind of an exercise or an activity. I say, okay, it would be like if you were in a group and you had them write down their answer before everybody talked about it. I say, go ahead and type your answer in the chat box, but don't send it yet. Okay, wait for me to say go, and we'll all send our answers together. So that way you get that uninfluenced kind of response, but the thrill of seeing what everybody else is saying. That's one of those kind of theatrical, you know, the big reveal kind of thing that keeps people engaged and their eyes on the screen. Those are the kinds of instances where I use that. Let me go through these last slides and then we'll open it up for everybody's questions, okay? If we haven't lost everybody, because it's Friday at 5:10 on the West Coast. Okay, so here's just some things I want you to think about. I want you to, when picking a method, think about whether your topic or your study needs are simple or whether they're complex, and whether you need a group think or the group dynamic, or if you need just individual approach, okay? And this, you can kind of lay this out as neatly as I have. I also want you to think about some other things. Sorry, I was gonna move something out of the way. If you need to share stimuli, you know, you're gonna think about certain methods over another. Whether you need reflective data or you're looking for gut reactions, whether you need to do any kind of laddering exercises, whether you have certain privacy laws and compliance to what you're talking about can make a difference, whether you do a group interview or whether you do it individually, what kind of documents need to be assigned in advance, whether you need video. I mean, this is a Zoom talk is a Zoom group. You can immediately have video after the group. So if you promised your boss a video reel, a highlight reel of the research afterwards, you have the video right here. Oh, which reminds me, so another freebie on here, I think Vox Pop Me was also doing some free stuff right now while we're all stuck at home with COVID. So if you wanted to do consumer research, they would like let you do one project for free or let you do a demo project for free. So if you guys didn't know about that, that was something that I had totally forgotten I got. Anyway, so yeah, that's it. Any questions that we can still answer? That I'm happy to stay as long as anybody wants any questions, or you can contact me and I can help you at another time.
Awesome. First of all, I'd like to say thanks. That was fantastic. A great overview of these 3 methods and some that we might not all super be familiar with. And we have a question from Tina from earlier, and it's around the impact of COVID on your research. What special considerations, if any, have you had to make?
So I'll be entirely candid. So I'm a sole proprietor, so I'm a shop of one. And when we went into lockdown, I was flooded with clients calling me and RFPs and lots of questions about remote research, and then it just all vanished. I have just in the last couple of weeks seen and heard from my other colleagues that things are picking up again. And that, like for the one study I have done this month is, man, people don't want to get offline with you. They are starved. WEBCAM groups have been doing, starved to talk to people, and more than willing to say yes to participate in some research, even if it's in the middle of the day. You know, where you couldn't get people to do research in the middle of the day, very rarely you could get a lunchtime group, maybe a businessman, to come in, but regular consumers have jobs just like all of us. So those are the kinds of things. I saw a big surge of requests, and now those requests from say 8 weeks ago are just starting to bubble up to the surface again. I haven't seen any problems with participants, more just the comfort level of people who are looking for alternatives. They feel like it's impersonal, or that we can't get certain segments to participate, which I just don't believe that that's true. I could go on and on about that one, but how about next question?
The next question is from DY, and it's, when are group dynamics advantageous over individual dynamics in terms of research?
Yeah, when any of your products or services are kind of social or shared, I would do a group. There, you know, sensitive topics are, or private things like healthcare research is not often done in groups. They're individual interviews. You can benefit from a group dynamic for almost all topics, with the I think with the exception of sensitive topics. One study that I peeled out of here that I didn't show is we had, this is kind of off track here for the question, but the topic where I was looking for people who had been affected by a friend or family member who had committed suicide. And that isn't, I mean, I just anticipated, so I consulted with a psychiatrist on how to approach, or whether I actually should approach these people before I even did this study for my client. That's the kind of thing where we did webcam, we did telephone assisted web interviews. So I had lots of different branding materials for an organization that has some pretty strong branding materials, and they didn't want to lose that heritage aspect, but they had to update their logo designs, materials, had to redo the website and stuff. And that was something where, you know, we did telephone interviews and I showed them all the materials online. Group dynamics are good when you want to build ideas, you want to ideate, you want to, yeah, just it's more of like social conversations, product sharing. Yeah. Did that answer the question?
Great. The next question is from Logan, and it's, how often do you obtain verbatim transcript so that you can easily pull and show quotes from your research?
Every single project.
And the follow-up is, what are your favorite transcription services?
Okay, so so something I didn't mention is, or maybe I did and I don't remember, most of these platforms can give you some sort of transcript, whether that's a video recording or an actual written transcript. So I'm in love with Otter right now to do my video and my audio if it's not done online, and some of these platforms use Otter in the background and they will give you transcripts in, I think they promise, in 12 to 24 hours. So it's not human transcription, but Otter's pretty good. But I do transcripts for almost every study, depending if I have the time. If I have to turn something like a top line around in 24 hours, well, then I probably just sit and listen to 4 hours of tapes and do my write-up and take my verbatims right out of there instead of waiting for a transcript. But now I got Otter. It does it in 5 minutes. or 35 minutes. Do you guys know this? Like in the chat box, I'm going to open up my chat box. Do you guys know this? Yeah, like bring my chat box up. You guys know Otter, yes or no? Type it in the chat box. Yeah. No, half yes, half no. I don't know. Check it out. I don't know if it's otter.com or otter. It's otter dot something funky.
And we've also got a question from Mara about your favorite platform for online card sorting.
My favorite. Okay, my favorite used to be Optimal Sort, but these platforms are now starting to build. Some of them have card sorting features inside the platform, and it's part of the suite you buy. So I mentioned doing micro communities is kind of my favorite methodology. It's not the only methodology I do, but it's kind of my favorite. So they have like all sorts of neat tools built in, like card sorting tools. So all they have to do is click a widget or click a button and it launches the card sort for them. Qualtrics is something that I have used in the past. My card sorts probably aren't like your guys' card sorts where there's 110 different features and stuff. My stuff can be rather simple, but they have a lot of they're built-in tools, just like build me a collage, and they have all the pictures there for you. And they have like a canvas for you to stick them to, and you can put stickers on there, and you can put notes, and you can create a collage of, you know, what your relationship is with SDXD or designing women. And we could look at them all together, or we could look at them individually if we did them in a group, or no. How about doing research with people first language isn't English? Is there a tool that's good enough to create oh, I don't know. No.
Yeah, in terms of pure transcription, I believe Rev uses real human beings, so that might be a good bet. It costs a little bit more, but you can look into Rev, R-E-V.
And you know, there's a number of small shops that do transcription, and they have native speaker transcriptions and all sorts of different languages. But that's kind of aside from remote research. Let's, are there any other questions? Oh, otter.ai.
Yeah, Mara is asking if you've used a collaborative tool like Miro or Mural for clients with research, and what ways have you used it? I
use Mural, and what is the other one called? Trello. Yeah, I think it's called Trello. Anyway, it's exactly the same as Mural. And I use the templates that they have there. I've never created my own template. They have a lot of great templates. I don't like it as much. I've tried it for customer ideation projects, but I think it's kind of awkward, or the learning curve. If this isn't exact, everybody can understand a Post-it note, right? And writing on a Post-it note and sticking it on the wall. Something, I don't know, it just didn't. I'll be candid with you. It didn't go as smoothly as I thought it would. I thought I'd get 100 Post-it notes on there, and I didn't. I got 14. You know, this is one remote research thing I think that's really going to have a problem, because if you do those sessions, ideation sessions or design sessions and stuff, there's a lot of energy in that room, right? Everybody's excited to be there. They're probably out of their office. you know, we're giving them lots of positive reinforcement, like every idea is a good idea, just stick it up on the wall. And that gets lost online because you aren't right there with them. I've tried doing video instructions for this kind of stuff too. The excitement, enthusiasm doesn't carry over a certain period of time.
Great. This feels like a good pause point for the Q&A. So I'd like to thank you, Monica, so much for this wonderful presentation.
Yeah, thank
and your
you.
time and effort. I'd like to thank Julie and Tina from Designing Women, our sponsors over at Adobe XD, and of course, each and every one of you who stayed, attended, engaged, and asked great questions. So on behalf of SDXD, we really appreciate you joining us.
And tell them that I think the deck's going to be available for them too, right?
Thank you. The deck and all the resources we mentioned will be available in a follow-up email and as a comment on the meetup page.
Fantastic. Thank you everyone for sharing your evening. Bye.